Bugs, glitches, and exploits in video games are often addressed or fixed during development. After all, more often than not, they detract from the intended experience, and it's in a developer's best interests to iron them out. Plenty of them slip through the cracks, of course. I mean, call me crazy, but I don't think the necromorph babies in The Sims were deliberate. But other times, the bugs caught by developers aren't squashed at all, but are rather elevated to become a new part of the game, sometimes even a significant one. Whether they be issues the studio noticed early in development and decided to expand upon, or things the community spotted after launch with the developers adopting them for later games, the features we talk about today may never have existed if not for serendipitous slip-ups, beloved bugs, and glorious glitches. In short, we're looking at some defining features of famous games that only happened because somebody messed up, bless them. I'm Peter from TripleJump, and here are 10 video game bugs that became features. Number 10. Creepers, Minecraft. A fairly well-known one to kick us off, but for those who aren't aware, Minecraft's infamous hissing annoyance known as the Creeper started life as a programming error in which the dimensions of the pig were mixed up. The result was the stuff of blocky nightmares, and it became the foundation for a new monster. Also, the original Creeper behaved a little differently, probably snuffling around looking for truffles, I imagine. Rather than exploding within close range of you and giving you a heart attack, Creepers would only blow up upon death. That wasn't annoying enough though, and they were changed into the suicide-bombing rascals we know today. More often referred to as the reason I lost all my diamonds in that cave, or why my wooden cottage now resembles conceptual art, the Creeper has become one of gaming's most well-known irritants. Not bad going for a programming abomination. Number 9. Mr. Saturn, Mother 3. Ah, Mother 3. One of Nintendo's finest achievements, but also the one it wishes to remain buried at all costs. Its predecessor, which in the West is known as Earthbound, gets all of the attention, while the rest of the series more or less languishes. The unofficial mascot for the trilogy is a Mr. Saturn. I say a Mr. Saturn because it's actually the name of a species rather than a single character, but that's a whole other rabbit hole. In Mother 3, you will meet one Mr. Saturn who gifts you a Franklin badge, a key item. After talking to the creature, it'll say farewell and wander off screen. As you move forward though, you'll see Mr. Saturn standing around, having not actually gone anywhere. This odd moment came about because a development bug made Mr. Saturn shuffle just slightly off screen rather than leaving entirely. The director found it funny and turned it into a fully fledged scene. Isn't that adorable? If a bit weird. It kind of describes the entire creature, to be honest. Why do they look like Kirby with a worrying facial growth? Was that a bug too? I don't know. Number 8. The wall jump, Super Mario 64. Wall jumping has been an intrinsic part of the platform genre for ages, with examples going as far back as the 80s and early 90s, and yet the patron saint of platforming, Mario, seemed to have no interest in the maneuver whatsoever. That is, until Super Mario 64. At least, that was the case if you couldn't figure out how to trigger a glitch in 1985's Super Mario Bros. Wall jumping there required clipping to the top corner of a block in a wall or a pipe, giving you the opportunity to jump again off the vertical surface. The exploit became one of many techniques in the speedrunner's arsenal, and may have convinced Nintendo to formalize it in later games. Now, we can't actually say for sure if this bug was the specific reason Mario can wall jump today. Nintendo have never actually verified this because doing so would be admitting to a mistake, and Nintendo doesn't make mistakes, just happy accidents. All that being said though, we do have a graphic for wildcard entries, but sadly we're yet to make one for entries of questionable legitimacy. We'll get working on that for next time, I hope. Number 7. MUTALISK stacking, StarCraft 2. In the first StarCraft, there was a fast-moving air unit called the MUTALISK, at least that's what it looks like the pronunciation is, but who knows, not me. It serves its main uses early in a match, either as a scout or just as a nuisance. There was also a quirk of the StarCraft game engine called magic boxes. That meant if you selected units that were close together and then moved them somewhere else, they would keep formation. But if you selected units that were too far apart, they would converge on a fixed location. Using this technique with a large selection of Mutalisks forced them to glitch together and appear to look like a single unit, a technique known as stacking. These stacked Mutalisks then have the advantage of being harder to hit, as they act like a single unit rather than a group. They can also attack at the same time, doing massive damage to a single enemy unit. For StarCraft 2 then, rather than removing the bug that allowed for stacking, developer Blizzard kept the tactic in, but made the Mutalisk weak to area of effect attacks. This meant you could still use the method as a tactic if you liked, though it now had an effective counter. At least that's our understanding. We know precious little about StarCraft, to be honest, and the only reason we're talking about it now is to grow our audience in South Korea. Number 6. The explosive pickpocket, Fallout 3. Pickpocketing has always been an interesting mechanic in the Fallout series. You could ignore it completely if you wanted, but using it gave you just one more solution to solve problems in the wasteland. In the case of explosive pickpocketing, that solution would be spreading your problem across a large area in the form of a fine red paste. Basically, pickpocketing allowed you not only to steal from a character, but also to plant items on them as well. Plant a live grenade, and they would never forget it. Or I suppose they'd forget it immediately, depends on what your view of the afterlife is. This was undoubtedly a programming bug in Fallout 1, as the game would often crash upon execution, and saving the game while it was taking place could corrupt your files. In Fallout 3, however, it was made deliberate. An in-game radio serial defines the maneuver as the Shady Sands Shuffle, Shady Sands being a community in the first Fallout game where the boogie tactic began. You'll even get an accompanying achievement for pulling it off, and there's an in-game counter to document just how many times you took advantage of a Fallout bug that Todd Howard had nothing to do with. Now that's a cause for celebration. Number 5. Juggling, Devil May Cry. Devil May Cry owes a lot to what came before it. The hack-and-slash combat system came from an abandoned version of Resident Evil 4, and its themes are influenced by the Divine Comedy. But what's less well known is that the famous juggling attacks were inspired by a development bug. Interestingly, it was a bug in, yet again, a different Capcom game, this time Onimusha Warlords. Devil May Cry is literally just a patchwork of all of Capcom's other work, it seems. Maybe they actually wrote the Divine Comedy, who's to say? During testing of Onimusha, the developers realised that you could keep an enemy in the air by repeatedly slashing at it with your sword. This juggling effect was removed for Onimusha itself, but was implemented in another game that was being developed at the time, Devil May Cry. Usually, as this list has demonstrated so far, bugs like this influence a mechanic either in the game itself or one later in that same series, but this one transcended its own game and gained life in a completely different one. Sort of like those fighting games where different franchises come together, only this time lots of bugs assemble together and somehow come up with a good game between them. Number 4. The High Jump and Cheesing It, Crash Bandicoot The N. Sane Trilogy. The N. Sane Trilogy faithfully recreated what is possibly the most beloved 3D platforming trilogy of all time, plus a little extra to boot. Impressively, the people at Vicarious Visions even took the time to include famous bugs. By exploiting a quirk in the physics engine, players of the original trilogy could gain a bit of increased jump height. Pulling it off required a combination of a slide, jump, and spin in quick succession, so it wasn't the easiest thing to do. But it did allow platforming fanatics, and more importantly, speedrunners, to get that extra height they so desperately needed. The move could get you over once impassable gaps, and even save a massive chunk of time by getting you a certain red gem in a new way. Rather than fixing it for the remake, Vicarious Visions just slightly tweaked the game around it, keeping the fun it provided, but addressing some of the bigger exploits it created. It's a subtle nostalgic detail that serves as much as anything as a little nod to fans of the original games. A bigger example of this, though, occurs in the Tiny Tiger boss fight in Crash Bandicoot Warped. Again, the original version of this featured a bug that could be exploited by players, namely running into the top left corner of the arena when the lions attack and not having to dodge them at all. It's handy. Again, Vicarious knew all about this little glitch and decided to keep it in the new version of the game. But the wink nudge here was a little less subtle, as executing the move in the Insane Trilogy sees the angry crowd throw pieces of cheese at you, because, you know, you're cheesing the boss fight. Very good. Very good. Number 3. The ending. Journey. I'll warn you now, if you've not played Journey yet, go and play it, because I'm about to ruin the ending. Hop along, it's a quick game, I'll wait, don't worry, it's fine, we'll just sit here while you go finish Journey. Oh, you can pause videos now. Oh man, YouTube's getting really high tech. Okay, well you do that and I'll be here when you get back. Journey's ending sees the main character struggle to reach the top of a mountain through a vicious snowstorm. They eventually fall in the snow before they can reach the peak, only for 6 hooded figures to pick them up and help them onto the summit in a powerful climactic moment. But this was not always the case. That Game Company, the studio behind Journey, no, that's actually their name, That Game Company, were struggling to find a way to end their project. They made a few playable versions with different endings, but none of them sat well with playtesters. Game director Genova Chen said that the inspiration for their eventual finale, though, came from one playtest in which the game bugged out and froze while on the snowy mountain. The tester found the concept of failing before reaching the top incredibly moving, and the studio went back to the drawing board with the aim of crafting an ending just as, if not more, emotionally impactful. That means Journey may not have had its dramatic crescendo without this very specific glitch. So remember kids, don't judge game bugs too harshly. Apart from Cyberpunk's, there's never going to be an ending to a game where someone's penis clips through their trousers. Number 2. Nuclear GHANDI, Civilization 5. The concept is well known. In Civilization 1, Gandhi's defensive pacifist AI would bug out during a game, making him ridiculously violent and hell-bent on nuking everyone around him. The legend goes that this was due to an integer overflow. In other words, Gandhi's nuclear aggression stat was set to its lowest point, and if an in-game event ever attempted to lower it even further, it would loop back around to the very highest possible setting, going from non-lethal Batman to full chaotic Joker in a matter of seconds. The thing is though, this is a lie. No such integer overflow ever existed in the original Civilization, something that was cleared up by Sid Meier himself in his memoir. The actual reason Gandhi sometimes appeared to be so violent in the game remains unclear. Whatever the case though, the Civilization series made sure it turned meme into reality with its 5th installment, making this game's version of Gandhi legitimately nuke-crazed. Yes, the internet managed to manifest a conspiracy theory into existence by sheer will, and memes. Now I'm just waiting on that Hell Valley Sky Trees horror game, Nintendo, you cowards. And number 1, Aggressive Police, Grand Theft Auto. In 1995, development began on Race and Chase. It was going to be a top-down racing game based on the idea of cops and robbers. The developers struggled with it at first though, considering their gameplay to be a bit boring. But when a bug caused the police AI to be far too aggressive, trying to ram the player directly rather than follow alongside, the team liked the idea so much that they ran with it. Apparently, a police cruiser slowly pulling up next to a robber's car and politely asking them to stop didn't make a very enthralling game. And for those who haven't yet made the connection, we must thank our lucky stars that they went with the more aggressive and violent route, because Race and Chase got a name change to celebrate the new style. You might even have heard of it. The Magic School Bus. And by that I mean Grand Theft Auto. That's right, it was an AI bug that was responsible for what is now one of the world's most famous video game franchises. Sure, the first couple of GTA games in and of themselves aren't exactly Hall of Fame worthy if you put aside the legacy, but fortunately they did become popular enough to warrant the creation of a fully 3D game, GTA 3, which spawned a series that changed the gaming landscape as we know it. God bless you, GTA, and all of your child-corrupting ways. Well, I mean, I say that, but I played a lot of GTA when I was a child, and I've only murdered 2 people, so can't be that much of a bad influence. See you later.